If you're one of those people whose morning starts with uh, scrolling through a news feed or checking your email, you definitely remember November 18th, 2025.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't just a slow news day. It felt like someone had physically unplugged the internet.
That's a great way to put it.
We're talking about that morning where you grab your coffee, try to log in, and just a huge chunk of the world online seemed to have vanished all at once.
It was such a fascinating moment of collective realization. This
Right.
idea that
Also,
the digital world we all lean on is, well, way more fragile and centralized than we like to admit.
right.
People were trying to check X, formerly Twitter, and just got that awful 500 error.
Yeah, that dreaded screen.
Projects on Canva just stalled.
Yeah.
Gamers couldn't get into League of Legends. Financial services were stuttering. It wasn't just slow. It was a complete uniform shutdown for so many.
And the confusion was a big part of it because at first nothing made sense. It couldn't be my local internet provider, right? Because my friend across the country was seeing the exact same thing.
Exactly. And it couldn't be a targeted attack on, say, social media, because you had everything from film review sites to banking platforms going dark.
So the evidence just piled up, pointing not to dozens of different problems, but to one single massive point of failure.
And that failure had a very specific fingerprint, that 500 internal server error. That code tells you unequivocally that the server itself is the problem, not your browser, not your connection.
And on that day, that fingerprint led right to a company most people have never heard of.
Cloudflare. They are, in essence, the internet's invisible gatekeeper. And on November 18th, the gatekeeper stripped, and a huge part of the internet just stumbled right along with them.
So we've done a deep dive into all the source material around this massive disruption. Our mission today is kind of threefold. First, we want to track the sheer scope of the chaos. Second, we need to finally understand what Cloudflare is and why it holds so much power.
And third, and this is the big one, we want to figure out what this outage reveals about the precarious, fragile truth of our very centralized digital world.
Let's unpack this. Okay, so let's start with the immediate fallout. That first question everyone had was, is it just me or is everything down? And the answer was, well, alarmingly close to yes.
It was. The scope was truly massive. It immediately validated this was a network-wide event that just jumped across continents. We saw it hitting Europe really hard first.
And then it just got worse from there.
Oh, yeah. The report spikes, they just shot up as the east coast of the U.S. started waking up, logging on, and putting this incredible strain on an already failing system.
It's that simultaneous failure across completely, unrelated services that really tells the story. Can you run through some of the big names that got hit?
The list is pretty comprehensive. Obviously X, which we mentioned, but that was just the start. We saw total outages for OpenAI, specifically ChatGPT.
Wow, so not just social media, we're talking about cutting-edge tech, just gone.
Exactly. Then you have productivity tools like Canva, which impacts millions of businesses and creators. Financial services got hit too, with the betting site Bet365 down, and the payment company Sage reporting severe problems.
And I saw even smaller, more niche sites were affected.
Totally. Even Letterboxd, the film reviewing site, was completely toast. The bottom line is, if you were plugged into Cloudflare's core services, you were feeling the heat that morning.
That range from global AI to a hobbyist film site, that's centralization in action. But what I found most striking was the painful irony of it all.
You're talking about the checker being checked, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
When the internet breaks, what's the first thing we do? We go look for confirmation that it's not just us.
And the ultimate paradox of this outage was that Down Detector, the very website we all use to see if other sites are down, well, it runs on Cloudflare too.
So you couldn't check if the internet was down because the status checker was also down.
That one detail just encapsulates the entire problem perfectly.
You literally couldn't escape it. I also read that anecdote in one of the sources about a reporter who couldn't even book holiday time off on their own company's HR system.
It's a perfect example. It shows how deeply embedded this infrastructure is. It prevents everything from complex gaming and AI all the way down to the most basic office function.
And users were seeing those technical clues, right? Those error messages.
Yep. They're either getting a request to please unblock challenges.cloudflare.com, which is their verification tool, or more often just that blunt message. Internal server error on Cloudflare's network. That was the smoking gun.
So we know Cloudflare was the puppet master here, but for so many of our listeners, it's a name they probably hadn't heard before unless they run a website themselves. So who is Cloudflare? We've called them the invisible gatekeeper. I like to think of them as the ultimate backstage crew for the internet.
That's a really good analogy. They were essentially the security guards, the traffic cops, and the express delivery service all rolled into one.
Okay, so break that down.
Their core business is sitting right between you, the user, and the server where a website actually lives. And they provide two main intertwined services.
And what are those?
First, they're a massive content delivery network, a CDN. A CDN is like a global caching system. So instead of a big image file traveling all the way from a server in California to a user in, say, London.
The CDN has a copy of it stored somewhere closer, like right there in London.
Exactly. It makes the web incredibly fast. The second key function is that they are a distributed DNS provider.
DNS, that's the internet's address book.
Right. It translates the domain name you type in, like google.com, into an IP address that machines can read. Cloudflare makes sure that address book is not only super fast, but also really resilient to attack. They manage the flow. And on top of that, they offer what we call edge services.
Okay, edge services sounds like serious jargon. How should we think about the edge?
The edge is just the closest physical point of their network to you. So Cloudflare isn't just storing cache files there anymore. They're actually running little bits of code and computation right at that edge location.
So they're doing the work closer to where I am, which makes things even faster.
Massively boosts performance, yeah. It cuts down latency by a huge amount.
With all of that, the speed, the navigation, the computing, their market share must be enormous.
It's staggering. And this is the critical statistic you need to know. More than 20% of the entire internet depends on some part of Cloudflare's infrastructure.
20%, that's not a company, that's a utility.
It really is.
And beyond all the speed stuff, they're known for security, right? They're like the internet's shield.
Absolutely. Their security setup is arguably the best in the world. They offer vital protection against cyber attacks, especially DDoS attacks.
That's when an attacker just floods a site with so much junk traffic that it collapses.
Correct. And to give you a sense of scale, just months before this 2025 outage, Cloudflare announced they had blocked a record-setting DDoS attack of 11.5 terabits per second.
Wow. That's a number that's hard to even comprehend. They're literally protecting huge parts of the economy from being knocked offline by attackers.
Which is why we use that power plant analogy. They are the centralized power grid for the internet. Your favorite website is your house. Cloudflare is the power plant.
You don't think about it when you flip the light switch.
Exactly. But if that central plant has a problem, the lights go out for every single house connected to it. And on November 18th, the lights went out not because of some external storm, but because something went wrong inside the plant itself. To really get the implications here, you have to look at the anatomy of the collapse. It's almost like a thriller. The trouble started pretty subtly, just little blips around 6 a.m. Eastern, which is 11 UTC.
But it didn't stay subtle for long.
Not at all. Just 15 minutes later, reports of problems were skyrocketing. It shows you just how fast that cascade happened.
And Cloudflare's own response must have been crippled by this, right? The sources said they were basically flying blind for a while.
They were. They officially confirmed they were investigating at 12.48 UTC, and they noticed specifically that the issue was causing widespread 500 errors, and this is the key, that it impacted their own dashboard and their API.
Wait, so the engineers trying to fix the problem couldn't even use their own tools to see what was going on?
For a time, yeah. Think about that. It's a nightmare scenario. It's like a surgeon trying to operate while the lights in the OR are flickering.
That tells you the failure wasn't superficial. It was deep in the core of the system.
Deep in the core routing, or the configuration logic. And here's where the analysis gets really pointed. This whole outage overlapped almost exactly with scheduled maintenance.
Uh-oh.
Cloudflare had planned work in their Santiago data center, SCL, scheduled from 12.00 to 1500 UTC.
So if you look at the timeline, the network starts breaking right as that maintenance window opens. It strongly suggests a configuration change they pushed for that maintenance was the trigger.
That is the most probable conclusion, based on how these things usually play out across the industry. When you see a widespread internal 500 error that lines up perfectly with planned maintenance, the culprit is almost always a bad configuration push that just propagated globally.
An internal human error or a procedural failure, basically, just magnified by the insane scale of their network.
Exactly.
So once they figured that out, what did the fix look like? How do you even start to fix the internet when your own dashboard is broken?
The first update that a fix was coming was actually pretty quick, around 13.09 UTC. They said the issue has been identified and a fix is being implemented. But, implementing a fix on a global network isn't instant.
It's not like flipping a switch.
Not at all. It's a massive, complex rollout. It involves trying to isolate the troubled parts of the network.
Which brings us to that weird incident in London with their warp service.
Yes. So Warp is Cloudflare's tool that encrypts your internet connection for better privacy. During all this, they temporarily disabled Warp access in London.
Which sounds bad, but was probably necessary.
It was almost certainly a triage step. They were trying to isolate a segment of the network, maybe reduce the traffic load, or test the fix in a huge hub like London before pushing it out everywhere. It was a targeted shutdown to help the healing process.
And eventually, things started to come back online.
It did. Specific tools like Access and Warp recovered pretty quickly. But the recovery was staggered. The core issue was fixed, but high error rates continued for a while as that new, correct configuration had to propagate across the entire globe, and all the systems slowly stabilized. It was a grueling, multi-hour process. If we just take a step back for a moment, this Cloudflare outage, it's not just some isolated technical glitch. It's a moment that really exposed a deep structural weakness in how we've built the modern web.
Right, this wasn't just about one company having a bad day. The sources point out this happened only about a month after a similar huge technical issue at Amazon Web Services, at AWS.
Exactly. We're seeing a pattern of fragility that is directly linked to centralization.
What's so fascinating is this paradox between the theoretical internet and the practical one. In theory, it's this vast, decentralized thing designed to survive a nuclear war.
Right. Data spread everywhere. But the web we actually use every day is incredibly centralized, all for convenience and performance. We rely on this tiny number of massive companies that become, by their very nature, single points of failure.
But hold on. If Cloudflare is the one stopping those insane 11.5 terabit per second DDoS attacks, aren't we just accepting a small internal risk, a bad configuration in exchange for massive external protection? I mean, is total decentralization even feasible if we want that level of security?
That is the $100 million question. It really speaks to the hard trade-off that companies are making. Centralized providers like Cloudflare, they offer security and scale and performance that is just impossible for an individual website to replicate.
But the cost of that benefit is that if the central power plant goes down,
The lights go out for everyone. Now, companies can mitigate this. There are strategies like multi-homing, where you use two different infrastructure providers at the same time, but that adds a ton of complexity, a ton of cost, and you often lose some of that performance gain.
so what the Cloudflare outage really showed us is that so many companies, even huge ones like OpenAI or critical financial platforms, have decided to accept that centralization risk. The benefits of speed and DDoS protection just outweigh the perceived internal risk.
That's it, exactly. The outage of 2025 was loud and clear proof that whether you're a small film review site or a multi-billion-dollar AI company, if you plug into that core foundation for stability, you inherit the risk of a cascading domino effect from a single internal mistake.
The whole system is built on this precarious balance between performance and resilience.
And it reinforces this idea that the biggest systemic risks today often come from inside the network, not from external attackers. They can stop the biggest DDoS attack ever recorded, but they can't always stop an internal code push from going wrong.
So to summarize what we've deep dived into today, Cloudflare is this essential piece of internet infrastructure. It's the CDN, security shield, that traffic caught for over 20% of the web.
And its massive failure on November 18th, 2025, caused an immediate global domino effect, taking down just about every kind of service you can imagine.
And the root cause seems very strongly linked to an internal technical issue, most likely a cascading configuration error that was triggered during routine scheduled maintenance.
Which brings us back to that fundamental question. Who really holds the keys to the digital world? The great outage of 2025 proved that those keys are concentrated in the hands of just a handful of massive companies. Giants that, for the most part, are unknown to the average person until they fail spectacularly.
And this is the final thought for you to mull over. If nearly a quarter of the internet relies on a single company, and that company is so advanced it can defeat the largest external attack on record, that incredible 11.5 terabits per second DDoS, what does it fundamentally mean that the system's biggest, most disruptive risks often come not from sophisticated hackers or hostile states, but from a simple internal configuration error made during routine maintenance? It suggests the weakest link is often human, buried deep inside the very network we all depend on.